Welcome to another edition of Careers That Matter. I'm joined today by Diana Chapman Walsh, who had been the president of Wellesley College for 14 years. It's an incredible position, one that she handled so magnificently. Today, she's joining us, and we're going to talk about, what does the role of a president of an academic institution look like? Diana, welcome.
Thank you, Stuart. Glad to be here.
So, what is the job of being a president? Is it a figurehead position, or do you actually roll up your sleeves and get into the details of the entire institution?
Well, that's a great way to put it, and it's both. You don't get too far into the weeds, or then you can't do it all. But one good way to think about it, I think, is to think in terms of constituencies. So there are these constituencies, and the president is a major force in each one of these constituencies. So there's the board of trustees, and they hire the president and fire the president if need be. We hope not too often. And the president is a member of the board of trustees. And so the president meets usually quarterly, sometimes more often in a formal big meeting with the board. And then usually there's an executive committee of the board, and the president's in very closer touch with them. They probably come to campus more often. The president, one of the most important partnerships for the president is with the chair of the board. That's really crucial, and that is something you work at and develop. And I think one of the things to say is partnerships. The president has to have a number of strong partnerships because it is a large and complex organization. And so those partnerships carry forward a lot of the work. So the board of trustees, then there's the faculty. The faculty is arguably the most challenging constituency. They have very strong views. I have a chapter in a book I just wrote about this that's called The Permanent People, because the faculty view themselves as a permanent people. Presidents come and presidents go, and they stay, most of them, the ones who have tenure. And so there is this sense that they own the institution, they run the institution, and there's a sense in which they do and should. Certainly the academic program is theirs. They're responsible for that, and we need them to take it very responsibly and seriously. And then there's the student body, and so there's always someone in the administration who's in charge of sort of making sure all's well in the student arena, and that has grown enormously in recent years. It's more and more and more complicated, partly as the student body has diversified tremendously, and students now bring way more than used to be the case, mental health issues, and sometimes they're under treatment for those to college when they pack. And so you have to be able to support whatever needs they have in that area. And then there's the staff, the administrative staff, and it's a hierarchical structure. So each member of the senior team has a piece of the administrative staff that they oversee, and there's usually a vice president for administration and finance who's kind of keeping an eye on all of the administration, but you're running sort of a hotel function. You're running a campus. The campus is being upgraded all the time. You have building responsibilities and old buildings often. So the trustees, the faculty, the students, the staff, and then the fifth one is the alumni. And you could say the alumni, and you could say the alumni and the donors, because there are donors who are alums, and more, there's some donors who aren't alums. And what we're seeing in higher education these days is some donors who have some strong ideas about what should happen and a fair amount of influence. So that's a really challenging part of the job too. You're fundraising, you're bringing in this money, you're working with these donors, but you have to make sure that they don't think that they're calling the shots, because if that happens, then all the balances start to break down.
So with so many different constituencies, what would a day typically look like? And knowing that no one day is a carbon copy of a previous day, but what might a day look like for you in that role?
That's a great question. You know, every now and then in those 14 years, I would have a student who would come to the office and she'd want to shadow me because she thought maybe she'd like to be a college administrator or a college president. And I had this fabulous administrative assistant who put my day together. She would put my days together and send me home with the next day's blueprint for what was going to happen. Um, so when one of these shadows wanted to shadow me, and I actually have a chapter in the book called The Student Shadow. Um, so she'd try to choose she'd try to choose a day that would be fairly kind of controlled and simple and straightforward without a lot of controversy and not too many surprises, certainly nothing confidential going on that day. And good luck doing it because you never knew. So the days were structured, but then things would happen. But typically, there were a huge number of committees that mostly chaired by faculty or involving faculty. And technically, in the college governance system, written down, of course, the president had a seat on all the committees. So I could have spent all my time in committees. One of the faculty members told me when I was new, well, that's how we socialize. Our whole social life really is just in committees. And after that, we go and do our writing and reading and teaching. The committee meetings weren't terribly social, but there were lots of them. So I had some meetings that I absolutely went to, and those were the ones that had to do with faculty action. So appointments, promotions, and tenure decisions, those were absolutely crucial. The president had to be part of those, that we were making commitments for many, many years, and the whole kind of quality and tenor of the faculty was shaped by those decisions. And then the budget and finance committees, I often would go to those. But part of what you have to do to survive is make sure you have very good people. The next person under you who's responsible for that work has to be very good at knowing when he or she needs a bit of presidential power, when a visit from the president is needed and could move an issue that's not moving along fast enough or that isn't fully understood or discussed. Let's bring the president in and let's have her be part of the meeting, and people would then sort of bring their best it would sort of ratchet the expectations up a little bit, and you could sometimes get things unstuck. So there was a lot of unsticking of stuck places that the president would be called in to do. And then there was a lot of symbolic things that if the president's there in the room, it becomes something more important. And so an important visitor or something like that. And dinners at the house and often, and sometimes when the faculty, we were trying to get something done, we were trying to change the curriculum and it wasn't moving along very well. And so I'd have dinners at the house with small groups of faculty, and we'd have a chance to talk informally and across differences and see if we could patch up some of the challenges that we hadn't been able to straighten out. So a lot of, and again, those, if you have a great team, the leader of the team of the area is very wise and strategic about, okay, when would a piece of the president's time make a big difference? And then there's fundraising. So a third of my calendar over the summer was taken over by the development office. They would meet with my wonderful administrative assistant who kept my calendar, and they'd agree on certain blocks of time when I would have to be on the road with my tin cup, as I called it. I have a chapter called The Tin Cup, meeting with alums and others and fundraising. And when I started, didn't have a lot of experience with that, and it became very, very successful at it, partly because Wellesley is a wonderful institution, and those alums loved it dearly and wanted to see it continue, cared tremendously about it. And so we would have the experience that we were sitting down together, both of us, caring deeply about this college that had been important to us, and and the world was changing. One make sure the college was changing in the ways it had to continue to be successful. They were very open to that, and so we felt privileged. The donor, I could sense in the donor the sense that I'm lucky that I'm in a position to be able to do this, and I'm really delighted to do it. And I'm talking to the president about it, and I want to take guidance from her. One of the early lessons I learned in that was really fun was a donor who came, and I had, there were development officers who were going out and about to the meeting, of course, and they had geographical areas. And so they again would be tuned in. They knew that once they had somebody who looked like they'd be interested in a considerably larger gift than usual, they'd make sure that the president made a call on that person. So they were sort of finding places where my time would be valuable. That's what everybody kind of was doing. And so I met with this woman, and she said, "Well, I'm on a board, and I'm the only woman on the board. It's a family foundation, a family organization company, and the men on the board have all done chairs at their institutions. And they turned to me and said, 'Barbara, it's your turn to do a chair. Would you like to do a chair?' And so she said, 'So I'm meeting with you because I could do a chair. How much is a chair?' And I told her it was $3 million at that time. Well, so I could do a chair. I'm prepared to do that. But I would like you to go back and think about what the most valuable thing is that we could do. And maybe it's a chair, and that's fine, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's something else that you'd really love to be able to do. So why don't you do that? And don't worry about the money, you got it. But just what I want you to do is really think about it and talk to others, and so that we can look back and say, we did the best possible thing with this money. And those were the kinds of donors that I got to meet with. And so I learned a lot from that. It was special.
You were also, though, the outward-facing,
Yes,
representation of the university. When media called or speeches had to be given, frequently it was you.
Oh, well, when it was high stakes, it was always me. And I had an interesting thing about speeches. When I first arrived, people were coming to present their credentials to the new president, and they did it in different ways. I had one of the members of the senior staff handed me his resignation letter. I said, "Wait a minute, what's this?" And he said, "I just want you to put it in your drawer because you and I have to have a very good relationship, and I want you to have it in case you need it, and we'll go on from there." This was different. So someone on his team came in to present herself as my speechwriter, and I said, "Uh-oh, we've got to find something else for you to do because I'm a writer and I'm going to be writing my own speeches, and that's how I'm going to be developing my own thinking." And so I did my own speech writing always. And somebody then gave me a book about Abraham Lincoln. It was called The Eloquent President, about the ways in which he actually shaped his vision as the leader through these speeches one by one. I don't pretend to have written speeches like his speeches, but so yes, so presenting Wellesley to the world was a very big part of it always, and evolving and shaping the vision of what that needed to be as the world was changing. Over 14 years, the world changed. We went through 9/11. We went through a number of other very big challenges. So yes, and that was the fun part, really, is sort of thinking about where are we and where are we going.
In your book, you talk about you hadn't planned on becoming president of Wellesley College, let alone any other university.
Right.
And you didn't even think that you were particularly qualified for the position, even though you were being enticed to put your name forward.
Yeah.
For somebody who thinks that maybe that position is attractive to them, what would you say would be the most important characteristic that they would have to possess, or maybe it's a suite of characteristics, to be considered for a position like that?
Well, I think they need to enjoy people. And yet, interestingly, I was an introvert. They need to enjoy people. They need to enjoy being with people, learning from people, learning with people, very different kinds of people. That has to be something that energizes them, that doesn't draw their energy out of them. But it does. But they, there are very many different styles of that, of enjoying people and being with people. And I once was at a meeting with the presidents of the so-called Seven Sister Colleges in Boston. I'm sorry, I'll get this, in the United States, the 7 sister colleges that were founded early, and they were founded, these women's colleges. And we were sitting and talking about something we were doing, and I made a comment. I said, I'm an introvert in an extrovert's job, and I saw the expressions on the faces of some of the others that there were, and one of them actually said, "I am too." So, but you have to be good with people. You have to be willing to learn, and I think your life has to be about learning. You have to love to learn. You have to, and therefore, you need to know that you don't know it all yet. You need to know that there is uncertainty. There's always uncertainty in this world, and that there are multiple perspectives, and that they will be conflicting a lot of the time, and that it won't be obvious what the next step will be. And so you need patience and resilience. And I think you need energy and resourcefulness. You need to have a way to replenish yourself when you've been, putting out too much and not getting a whole lot back, whatever that is, some process for going away and finding yourself again. There's the number of times that that you're defeated and discouraged, and it didn't go the way you want it to be, it's frequent. It happens frequently. That wasn't a good sentence, but so you have to be able to pick yourself up again and get back into it, and find your self-confidence again. Sometimes it's sort of like being in a boxing ring or something. Resilience. And then joy in seeing these young people who come to this place and who bring their dreams and hopes for the future. And so many of them are in a situation where their lives truly can be transformed by the experience of being in these wonderful institutions that are dedicated to supporting them in their learning and in their growth. I would always, my administrative assistant knew that if I had a couple of really demanding and tough days, she would find a way to get me with students for a little while and to hear their stories, to be with them. They always brought me back.
Well, what a wonderful role, and thank you for giving us a glimpse into that world, because it's not one that we get to see inside of very often. We only see the outside. Thank you very much. Thank you for your wonderful book and for your time today.
Thank you so much, Stuart. And thank you for enjoying my book so much and for your time. It was really fun.